Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 304, Relationship Q&A, the struggles we don't talk about enough. Well, welcome back as we continue this month with our focus on relationships, healthy ones, unhealthy ones, and the huge impacts they can have on our lives. And we've been talking about communication, behaviors, and looking at what you might want to change in your environment and change within yourself. Well, today we're going to do something a little bit different. Over the years, both as a therapist and a coach, I've heard a lot of the same kinds of questions come up again and again when it comes to relationships and boundaries, etc., etc. I've gotten questions about settling, ignoring red flags, and what to do when people push past your limits, or even how to know if you're the one blurring the lines. These aren't just random questions. They're some of the most common struggles I've seen clients wrestle with, and a lot of them I've had to work on myself along the way. So in today's episode, I want to walk you through some of those questions, share some real-life examples, and hopefully give you some clarity and encouragement for your own journey. And if you find yourself nodding along and realizing, yeah, you struggle with some of these patterns too, well, that's exactly why I created my Find Your Voice program. It's a 6-month course designed to help you build healthier boundaries, stop abandoning yourself in your relationships, and finally feel more confident about being who you are. And as you listen to these, if different questions come up for you that you'd like me to cover, shoot me a message. Love to do that in a future episode. Okay, question 1. How do I know if I'm settling in a relationship that looks fine on paper and from the outside? Well, I think what we need to remember is settling doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes and often it's about all the little ways you go quiet on the inside. You might notice you don't feel excited to share your real thoughts. You might keep things surface level to avoid conflict with them, or you find yourself saying, it's fine, I'm fine, it's cool, when it really isn't. A healthy relationship might not be fireworks every day, nor should it be, but it should at least have a pulse, like it should feel alive. You should feel, at the bare minimum, seen, respected, and supported. And it should be a great place for you to grow as well. So if you notice that your needs, your feelings, or maybe your goals consistently take a back seat to whatever's going on for them or the relationship, that's a sign you might be settling. So I want you to ask yourself, am I here because I feel loved and valued, or because it feels safe and familiar? And that could be any type of relationship. That could be a work relationship, a friendship, or a partner. So here's an example. I once worked with a woman who stayed in long-term relationships where, quote unquote, nothing was wrong. On paper, everything looked great. No big fights, no big betrayals. But deep down, she felt invisible. She realized that she had been settling for not bad instead of reaching for truly good. A relationship where her voice really mattered and her joy was present. So that shift helped her see that fine wasn't enough. She was playing it safe, but she wasn't happy. Question 2, why do I keep ignoring red flags even when I notice them? Oh yeah. Well, the short answer is, what's familiar feels safe, even when it's not healthy. And we've been talking about that this month. So if you grew up in a home where you had to manage other people's moods, even in very subtle ways, maybe where guilt trips were normal or where your feelings got dismissed, well, then your brain and your body learn to normalize that behavior. So when it shows up in adult relationships, it doesn't always feel wrong. It feels familiar. That's why you don't notice it as off or wrong. Instead, you might explain things away by saying stuff like, well, he's just stressed out, or she didn't really mean it like that. Because we convince ourselves it's not a big deal because on some level, our nervous system is saying, I know this, I can handle this, and or I'm afraid to confront this. But handling it isn't the same thing as being cared for. For example, a client once told me her boyfriend's sarcasm wasn't that bad because she grew up with a sarcastic dad herself. But over time, we talked about how the comments really chipped away at her confidence and created anxiety. And once she connected the dots back to her childhood, she realized she wasn't being too sensitive. She was tolerating disrespect because it felt familiar. That's why it's so important to do your early work and figure out what your origins are. Then you can see what's what. Okay, next one. Mary, what do I do if someone I love keeps pushing past my boundaries? This is a tough one. Remember, boundaries are not about controlling other people. They're about protecting you. When you say no or set a limit, you're simply defining what's okay and what isn't. And so if someone repeatedly ignores or mocks your boundaries, I think that's really important information. In fact, alarm bells go off for me because it shows whether they're capable of respecting you. You can start with small, clear statements like, I really care about you, but I need notice before visits. And watch their reaction. Do they hear you and choose to make adjustments consistently, not just once or twice to make you forget about it? Or do they laugh it off? Do they argue and keep doing the same thing? Or just not say anything but keep doing the same thing? Well, guess what? Their response, their behavior tells you whether the relationship is safe. That's what's key. Let their behavior show you whether the relationship is safe or not. For example, one woman I knew had a partner who just kept showing up unannounced at her house. And at first, she thought, oh, that's sweet. He really wanted to see her. But after a while, it felt invasive. And so she asked him directly, hey, can you call before you come over? He laughed and said, oh, you love it when I surprise you. Well, that was her sign, at least in my book, because it wasn't about romance at all. It was about ignoring her need for respect. Eventually, she started limiting contact because she realized if he couldn't respect a simple boundary like that, he wouldn't respect the bigger ones either. He also gaslit her. Did you hear that? Oh, you love it when I surprise you? That's not okay. Even if that's true, it's not okay for him to say that, especially in response to her request. Okay, number 4, how can I tell the difference between real support and control? We just talked about that last week. Remember, real support respects your choices, and control tries to make them for you, or get you to make them. So when someone really supports you, they might offer ideas or encouragement, maybe solicited advice because you asked them for help, but they detach with love and they leave the decision in your hands. And they don't get angry if you don't take their advice. They might get upset, but they don't put that on you either. They deal with that themselves because they might be worried about you. Upset for valid reasons. But control, on the other hand, often disguises itself as help, but it comes with strings. So if you say no, they might sulk or argue or pressure you till you give in. Again, even if their intentions are well-meaning, maybe they're worried about you, maybe they want good things for you. Doesn't matter. So ask yourself, do I feel more capable and grounded after their involvement? Or do I actually feel smaller and more dependent? Maybe agitated, resentful. That feeling is your clue, and especially when you start working on boundaries and healthy separateness and really work on your sense of self, you're going to get more and more annoyed when people overstep like that. It's really going to start rubbing you the wrong way, and you're going to see it more as control, and that is a healthy thing. The old you may not have been as aware of how you were really feeling on the inside and why. So, for example, I had a client tell me one time that her friend insisted on helping her during a breakup. And at first, of course, she was so grateful, but she noticed her friend kept telling her what decisions to make, when to call her ex, what to say, even whether she should date again and when. And at first, my client was really vulnerable, was getting out of a very toxic situation. Her head was a mess. She really was so open to whatever people suggested. But as she got stronger, as we were working together, she started to push back on her friend in a healthy way, and her friend got really upset. And that reaction showed it wasn't about care. It was about control. Now again, well-meaning, her friend really loved her, but her friend really wanted this outcome and wanted to manage the whole thing. Number 5, what if I'm the one who struggles with blurred boundaries? Well, first of all, it takes big ones to admit that. That's very brave for lots of reasons. And many of us have been there. Blurred boundaries often come, like we've been talking about, from a really good place. You care, you want to help, you want to feel close. But underneath, it can really actually be about avoiding vulnerability. Sharing your real feelings, your real fears, or God forbid your flaws can really feel risky. So instead, you might try to connect by merging with the other person, fixing their problems, getting all up in their life, moving too fast. The problem is that doesn't build true intimacy. In fact, it can create dependency and resentment, and ironically, a lot more conflict. And you lose sight of where you end and the other person begins. The work here is to slow down, detach with love, let the relationship breathe, and practice showing who you are instead of managing their life. And then look at your underlying fears. What are my fears about being vulnerable? What are my fears about just letting them be who they are? Will I like who they are, or am I trying to shape them into what I want? There's so many good questions you could ask yourself there. Like a client I worked with a while back who finally admitted she always tried to save new partners from their problems. And she really thought that she was building closeness, but really she was avoiding sharing her own fears and her own needs. And she and I worked on the fact that that's because a long time ago, she learned that her needs weren't going to be met and her feelings probably weren't going to be honored. But once she learned to pause and say, here's what I'm feeling, instead of fixing, her relationships became more balanced and a lot less exhausting. And of course, some of them she ended up having to let go of because once she started detaching and stopped rescuing, some people didn't know what to do. Question 6, why does stability sometimes feel boring compared to drama? Oh, this is such an important question because a lot of people secretly wrestle with it but don't want to admit it. So if you grew up in any kind of chaos, meaning where love was inconsistent, boundaries were ignored, didn't exist, there were some boundaries, not others, or people's emotions were basically unpredictable, well, guess what? Your nervous system got wired to equate intensity with connection. So when you meet someone steady and safe and emotionally available, well, your body doesn't always read that as love. It may actually feel kind of flat or even boring because it doesn't light up the same fight or flight response you're used to. You know, drama floods you with adrenaline and it just becomes normalized over the years. You don't even notice it. And yeah, the highs and lows feel exciting, but they're exhausting and unsustainable. You know, real stability, on the other hand, is calm and consistent. It doesn't trigger that rush. which is why it can feel unfamiliar. And unfamiliar often gets mistaken as uninteresting. The truth is, the boring feeling is really just your nervous system learning to adjust to safety. And over time, that steadiness becomes the foundation for trust and true intimacy. For example, I once worked with someone who left a string of relationships that were so fiery and dramatic and, wow, full of ups and downs. And when she started dating someone kind, consistent, and grounded, which is what she was looking for, she told me, Mary, I don't even feel the butterflies. I think I'm not attracted. But really, over time, what she figured out was that she was mistaking calm for lack of connection. And as she worked on healing her nervous system and spending time with this person, she realized what she called boring was actually what she always needed. That peace and safety in someone who showed up every day. Now, I'm not talking about being with someone who is so safe that they don't try and they don't take risks and they don't grow, or they're just really not compatible with you. You just really want to be careful in terms of mistaking calm for boring and uninteresting. And the final question, why am I all of a sudden crying all the time and I can't stop? Please tell me, Mary, when it's going to stop. Unfortunately, I do see this often with clients. And what that is probably you're in a place now where it's safe to grieve. And you may not even know what you're crying about some days. And it may come and go. It may show up when you least expect it. With some clients, we've talked about how that emotion just sits in their throat and they can feel it. Memories come up, perhaps. Actual feelings come up. So some things you might be able to identify, some things you might not, and don't worry about it. All you need to know is you are grieving. And if you're grieving, it must be time, because grief does what it wants to do, like we've talked about here many times. And so, in essence, you are letting yourself be sad and disappointed and upset about all the things that maybe you couldn't grieve in the past. You weren't in safe enough relationships to grieve. You weren't glued together enough as a person, meaning, like with some of the questions that we talked about earlier today, you didn't have great boundaries between you and other people. You may have spent so many years focused on taking care of everyone else and taking care of everyone else's feelings, that you've subverted yours. You disconnected from yours. And so when I start working with people and they start working on boundaries and their sense of self and their sense of confidence, part of owning your truth, you have to own your feelings and all of your experiences and everything that mattered to you and matters to you. That is how you are validating the self. And sometimes you're grieving things from so many years ago, you can't even name them. Don't worry about it. You will stop crying when you're done. You will stop crying when you're done. Don't try to push it away. Don't try to numb it out. Don't try to get busy and not do it. Let it come and let it go. I tell people all the time, if you do nothing else in therapy or coaching, learn how to grieve. Learn how to grieve in your work. You will honor yourself. You will calm down your nervous system. You will feel like you make more sense because you will. Because you're no longer denying some very big truths about who you are. Your experiences are more than things that happened because they happened to you. And for a lot of people, there weren't healthy enough grown-ups around at the time to help you walk through those feelings and honor them and give you healthy mirroring around how you must be feeling and to validate the losses and perhaps the traumas. And then, because of that, the things you lost over the years up until today, opportunities you didn't go after, healthy relationships you didn't get to have, and especially the relationship with yourself. So with all these questions today, at the end of it, it's really about the relationship between you and yourself. Thank you so much for joining me for this Q&A. My hope is that hearing these common struggles and how we can start to approach them differently reminds you that, oh no, you're not alone. We've all wrestled with blurred boundaries, red flags we didn't want to see, or moments we gave too much of ourselves away. And if you're ready to dig a little deeper and really change how you show up in relationships, go to the show notes and check out my Find Your Voice course. Or sign up for a power hour with me. We can sit there and figure out, what do you need to start moving forward? In the course, it's where we take these concepts and break them down step by step so you can stop second guessing yourself. You can really set healthier boundaries, and you can build the kind of confidence that sticks around. So today we answered some of the most common questions that I've heard as both a therapist and a coach. From knowing when you're settling, to why we ignore red flags, to what we do when boundaries aren't respected. A lot of these struggles show up for almost everyone at some point in their relationships. I hope you gained some good insights today. Hopefully it validated where you are if you're in the middle of this work. For those of you working hard, I see you. Be proud of yourself. And remember, if you're in the middle of it, just keep going. It gets better. All right, so pay it forward. Keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.